our choices in every single moment hold so much power. So just because you were a certain way with somebody yesterday does not mean that you have to be that same way with somebody today. You can choose to show up differently the second you decide you are ready to.
Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj Jana, founder of Liberate, and it's my mission to help you become the most grounded, loving, and authentic version of yourself that you can be. Each week, I interview experts in the fields of mindset, spirituality, and emotional well-being. My brilliant guests share their tools, stories, and unique perspectives to help you develop the skills you need to show up fully for the people and things that matter most in your life. Now let's dive in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's reflection episode of Stay Grounded. I hope you're all having a beautiful day so far. If this is your first episode of Stay Grounded, welcome. Every single month, I take the time to digest all of my biggest takeaways, insights, lessons, ahas, triggers, you name it. I just take a look at my entire emotional well-being, mental well-being, relational well-being, and I do an audit to learn how I can improve, what I can do better, what were the common themes. And these episodes are a way for me to share what I'm learning from building companies or from navigating relationship challenges or from working through health issues or really just learning how to be fulfilled on this journey of life, human, all of it. And in this week's episode, we talk a lot about my journey of learning to lead from the heart. And what does that actually mean? Um, I think heart-centered leadership is a relatively new phenomena or concept that is being talked about in leadership circles now. Like, how do we take into account the care and well-being of all the people in our lives, and how can we show up from a place of humility and service so that we can access greater levels of harmony, peace, cohesion, collaboration, and ultimately healing. I believe that this paradigm of leadership is important. It's something that we all, it's where I think the world is headed. And I talk a lot about what is actually necessary in order for us to really step into this form of leadership, because it's not something that's taught inside of schools right now. Like, we have emotional intelligence training, we have emotional awareness training, we teach emotional resilience, but learning to stay anchored in the heart as we communicate with our loved ones, as we communicate with our intimate partner, as we communicate with our children, as we communicate with the world, is hard. It's messy, and there requires a new paradigm of navigating this specific landscape. And I hope this episode covers a lot for you. We talk about self-awareness, the inner work, how to access more vulnerability and courage. Um, how do you actually connect to a deeper purpose and a shared vision in your relationships? How do you actually learn to trust your intuition and allow that to guide the way that you navigate conversations, and so much more? This was a beautiful episode, and one that really helped me even anchor into how far I've come. So I am so grateful for all of you for being here and for giving the show a platform and for giving me a chance to share perspectives like these. It means a lot. So I appreciate you all. And without further ado, here is this month's monthly reflection episode. Enjoy. Hello, Georgina. Welcome back to the show.
Hey Raj, great to be here. How are you doing? How are you?
Well, I am recording this from Boulder, Colorado. Settled or settling. I wouldn't say I'm settled yet, but kind of landing back into the States after a wildly beautiful, transformative, amazing chapter of Nosara, Costa Rica. And it's been a bit of an integration coming back into the States. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Like, going from, like, I realized just how much of it, I was so in my rhythm in Costa Rica, like daily beach walks, daily ocean, like just so much nourishment in the jungles away from EMFs. Like, there's so much of that. And then coming back into the States, like I got plugged right back into, like, I was like going to speaking engagements, and I was like traveling and moving, and just felt like there was a lot of ungroundedness or opportunities to unground. But I also love that. because there are opportunities for me to like double down on my practices, double down on like, okay, how do I come back to center? How do I create more of like the regulated Raj? And so it's always beautiful coming from Costa Rica here, or I've done it twice now, I guess, but just to land back in, and then yeah, and closing out 32 was a like I landed, and then it was like also a deep period of reflection for me around like, saying goodbye to 32, stepping into 33, and like all of that, like what that entails. And so I've been in a beautiful state of reflection and gratitude for the month of April and really the whole year of 32, because I genuinely feel like this last year was a rite of passage into me becoming the man that I am here to be. And so I'm super grateful, and I'm really excited to be here with you. It's always good to see your face.
You too. I'm curious to know what does the bolder chapter represent for you?
Uh, um, that's a beautiful question. And I've been really leaning into this sort of idea of like living in seasons. Like I've been
Mm,
really integrating with this idea of seasonal kind of living,
mhm,
where like towards the end of the year, I have this like kind of reflective shield come on where I'm like, I'm not necessarily like doing and building and growing. It's like I'm like slowing down, cocooning, thinking, going into my cave, doing my deep work. Like it's like there's a period of that like releasing. And, you know, one of the big things I'm stepping into, I feel like Nosara is a place where I come home. Nosara is a place where I like do my deep work. It's where I do my vipassanas. It's where I do my plant medicine. It's where I do the deeper shadow work. It's where I'm held in community and able to go to parts of me that I just can't go on my own. And it's where nature is there. And so for me, it's important to name what Nosara is because it allows me to really shape what Boulder is for me. And one of the biggest things that came this month was the eclipse. At the
mhm,
end of April, or really like in the beginning of April, middle of April was the solar eclipse. And for me, it was actually a very intense period. Like I don't know if it's just because I've gotten more sensitive over the years or like I've just cleared so much stuff from my body. I just feel very sensitive to large astrological events that happen. Like I don't really feel much like with moons. Like I mean those are like whatever, but like it's like there's something about the bigger astrological events that evoke a lot of introspection, reflection, and patterns. And what I was noticing in April, actually, it's interesting. You said, "What is Boulder about?" Because I was like leaving Nosara, and the solar eclipse was happening, and I'm stepping into this new wave of being in the States now for 6 months. Like I actually felt during the eclipse this very strong pull to go back into old patterns, which for me, both if you think about in business and in intimacy and relating, are two real, like those are the two areas that I feel like my patterns show up the most. And with intimacy and relating, it was, I felt myself going back into like patterns of self-abandonment, which we've talked about a lot on this show and how much work I've done to address the roots. And I feel like I have. Like, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work around this and I feel really complete. And there was something about the eclipse that was like bringing up all this old shadow material just from like the archives. It was like an opportunity. It was like, oh, are you really done abandoning yourself? That
mhm.
was the question that kept showing up. Are you really done? And then the same in business, which was like, I've been stewarding Liberate, which is one of the most important projects I could be working on right now for solving one of the most important problems I see in the world right now. But when I'd be in circles with other investors or creators, like I would feel myself get shy and timid. And I wouldn't want to speak it. I wouldn't want to be bold. I wouldn't want to be the visionary that I actually am. Like there was a part of me that was like, so those patterns were showing up. And these patterns were loud. And it was just such an interesting period because here I am getting ready to step into a new chapter physically. Like I'm leaving this place, the place I come to do all my work. And right as I'm leaving, there's this period of time that is a test in some ways, like, Raj, are you sure this is what you want? And I remembered the first, I think it was like the second week or first or second week of April, I like consciously made the choice to double down on who I'm becoming, not who I've been. And I feel like we get these opportunities in our lives through crisis, through people showing up, through tests. I like to call these little tests from the universe. Like every time I go into a big medicine journey or a big vipassana or a big transformational experience, I always get a big aha or an insight or a principle that's like, okay, this is how I'm meant to live my life. Like last year with ayahuasca, when I got out of my 7 day ayahuasca ceremony, the biggest one was, Raj, choose yourself. That was it. That was like it doesn't matter if someone else chooses you, you choose you. And it was like, okay, like, and choosing yourself is the opposite of self-abandonment. So it's interesting that, like, even though I've learned these lessons, we continue getting tests in our lives to recommit our vows to who we are becoming, to the legacy statements we are writing, to the principles that govern our lives. And that was one. So, like, for me, it was about doubling down, choosing myself in the face of self abandonment.
How are you being tested, do you think? What kind of things were happening to make you feel this?
I mean, dating, relating, intimacy, like, that's usually like the area for me, like where most of my patterns of self-abandonment, of overgiving, of overcaring were coming from, or in relationship with my family and my parents. And like those are all areas of me overgiving, overcaring without holding strong, centered, powerful truth and protection of my own internal state, protection of my heart, um, a responsibility to care for my inner child. Like, like there's all of that, my nervous system, like the responsibility I have. And so those are like my relationships, not whether it's intimacy or parents, like that's where that all comes up.
Mhm.
Um, but then the other part, which is not shining my brightest light, not stepping into my fullest, most authentic expression, not being the brightness of me in settings with my work, with my art, with my creativity, with what I'm here to do, with my mission. That usually comes out in work settings, whether it's in like a one-on-one conversation with a potential investor or a partner, or I'm in a room and somebody's like, "Hey, like, why don't you say give a 3 minute pitch on what you're doing or who you're doing?" Or what it's like in those moments, they're so subtle, but they're there. They're true. And what I've noticed in myself is these moments, whether you're consciously relating, you're going on a date with somebody and there's something out of alignment that you're feeling, whether in the way that the date is going or in the things that they're requesting of you or the things that like it's like, or maybe there's a desire showing up for you. Like in those moments, how do you choose to respond? Do you choose to go with the flow or do you choose to speak up? Right. And the choice to speak up, the declaration of protection of me, of what I desire, the claiming of what I desire is what I mean by committing to who I'm becoming. Right? Like cuz it's always in those micro moments. Like people like to say transformation is like a lifelong journey and it is, but I also believe that our choices in every single moment hold so much power. So just because you were a certain way with somebody yesterday does not mean that you have to be that same way with somebody today. You can
Mm,
choose to show up differently the second you decide you are ready to.
mm.
And that readiness, the willingness was what I doubled down on. And that is what I'm bringing forth into Boulder. The doubling down on the commitments to who I'm becoming and shining authentically, audaciously, and with full conviction in my path because my path is connected to something much greater than me. That was the biggest thing that Nosara gave me this last year, last 8 months. I've been working on my relationship to God, spirit, higher power, and that is what I'm doubling down on. I don't serve my ego. I serve, well, I serve something bigger than me. That's the commitment that I'm making. And that's what I'm and I don't know what that looks like. So I don't know what this chapter is going to hold, and I'm committed to serving the truth of the truth of what's flowing through me in my relationships and in my work and my creation in the world and as my role as a leader in my communities. Like I really feel like 33 for me is about leadership in every domain of my life. It's always been about leadership, but like I really feel myself stepping into the next level of my own masculinity and my own providership and my own like just me showing up bigger and bigger in my life. Um, and that's what feels most exciting and alive for me. So that's what Boulder's about. And Boulder's gonna have a lot of fun. It's not just gonna be all that. It's just gonna be fun, playful. I love the summers in Boulder. They're just so epic. Like there's so much hiking and nature and creeks and human beings, and I just love it here. So I'm excited for all of it.
Sounds amazing. I'd love to talk about the leadership piece a little bit more, but first of all, I want to ask you, did you get a chance to see the eclipse where you were based when it happened?
I no, I didn't get a chance to see it, but I could feel it. Like I really could. Like it was, man. I There's just something so powerful about the times we are living in right now. Like I really feel it. I really feel like we were all born into these bodies. We are awake during this time of being alive for a very special reason. And each person, their work is to discover that reason, right? And to uncover that reason and to ask questions. But when I experienced just what I was experiencing around that time was just so potent. It was just so raw and primal, and it was bringing up so much. And the technology of the universe is something that baffles me. The technology of consciousness, how certain natural phenomena evoke certain sensations and feelings and thoughts and behaviors in all of us. Like it is one of the most fascinating things on the planet. So I was sitting in a lot of fascination, but I didn't get to see the physical manifestation of that fascination. My father did though. He sent me a bunch of pictures. He went
Oh,
out and
wow.
got to see the actual eclipse and he said it was epic.
Must have been amazing.
Yeah, he said it was absolutely epic. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad your dad got, I'm glad your dad got to see it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Isn't it amazing this like universe that we exist in and all these unseen forces and phenomenon that we just don't understand at the moment how it impacts us. But I think you're right. There's definitely something there that is driving us in some way. So I'm so
Yeah.
happy to
Oh, and
experience.
I've just learned to trust so deeply in what I'm feeling. You know, like I think that's one of the biggest gifts I've given myself from doing the deeper inner work is I have built an incredible level of trust with myself. Like before I couldn't trust what I was feeling. I couldn't trust what was there because I had a lot of trauma, because I had beliefs that weren't mine, because I was still wrapped into like my psyche was still kind of wired with programming that I didn't consciously choose. So, like, anytime I would have internal feelings or internal truths show up, they would butt up against a lot of these constructs, and it made it hard for me to trust what was real and what wasn't real. And, one of the things I'm so grateful because now I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can feel something deeply show up and sit with the totality of it and be able to actually distinguish, all right, what's a program, what's a truth, what's a physiological fear and a response, what's a desire, and I can actually begin to digest what's happening real time. It used to take me months. Now I can do it faster, but in more real time, I can actually begin to synthesize the information to communicate effectively with the people in my life. And it has really been a gift. Like I feel like I've been able to open up a world of relating, whether it's in intimacy and relationship and dating, or with friendships and prickly conversations, or navigating certain moments that are charged and filled with conflict and have a lot of tension and so many triggers. Like I just feel like I've created a nervous system that is intuitively intelligent, that's intuitively clear and is in connection with my mind and my voice. And so this month was actually really powerful opportunities for me to practice my voice, like, and really be grounded in like a deep place when I communicate. Like really, really, really feeling, where am I speaking from? Am I speaking from my mind and my conditioning and my patterns and my fear and my attachment system? Or am I speaking from my heart, my connectedness, my divinity, my soul, my intuitive nature, my depths? Where is my transmission coming from to this other person?
Mm.
And I notice that when things are coming from my depths, from my body, the way that others experience me is very different than when something's coming from my mind. And I've been really practicing stepping more into that, really accessing more of my depth and my voice and allowing that to really move people. I feel like we all have such a gift in this thing we call a voice, you know, and if we are lucky enough to have a voice that can make sounds, I think it's so beautiful to do the work to really connect with the true voice, the deep voice, the voice that sits beneath all of the chaos. It's the ocean of you. And when we can really practice speaking from there and feeling all the feelings that come from speaking from that space, the vulnerability, the discomfort, and I just think there's so much of an impact we can make in our relationships. I really feel that when we can learn to speak from the depths of our hearts and our souls and our bodies, as opposed to our minds and our attachments and our expectations and our fears, our concerns, because there's enough of that in the world. There's enough people doing that. And I don't believe we can solve the problems in the world with the consciousness that created it. In order for us to truly rise above, we have to start speaking from a different space. So that was something that just really came true for me this month was, where am I speaking from?
Do you remember what some of the triggers were that made you kind of tap into that question? And then how have you been able to understand what's happening to the point where you can explore it in this intentional way?
Well, I don't know if I want to go into my triggers this month because they're it actually take away from the principle of this.
Mm.
Like what I can maybe give is more context
Mm.
for kind of this what I'm feeling. And I can
Yeah,
maybe,
just just says something really quite interesting and quite profound. This notion that, and I guess that there's also a link with whether we're responding, whether we're reacting to things. Like how are we getting into that place of like conscious awareness where we can, speak or respond in a way that's deeply rooted in what the truth is, rather than just all the chaos and clutter around the outside of it. I, I'm I'm just, I guess I'm curious to know, is there like a shortcut to get to that place, or how have you been navigating to get this awareness that there is another level of communication that you can tap into?
oh, I think the most powerful question you can ask is, before you say something to somebody, where what voice is where is this coming from? Just like that subtle awareness. Is it coming from love, which is, and I could speak to maybe the qualities of love, which is grounded, safe, compassionate, connected, curious, um, brave, vulnerable, raw, um, exposed, uh, maybe connected, calm. You know, that there's a quality to the frequency of love and an embodied thing to communicate versus the other side, which is fast. In many ways, like speed is a quality of the voice. And I can notice this within myself. Like I don't know if you've noticed this, but I actually feel my voice has slowed down a lot. versus where it was a few years ago. Like, because a few years ago, I was living predominantly in my head and I wasn't aware of it. And I was speaking really fast and I was communicating really quickly and I was very, um, it just felt very like even if I go back and read the nature of my writing, it was very like very fast, very long, very large, very and so there's a quality to that, right? There's a quality to the speed, the frenetic nature, the expectations maybe. Maybe there's a charge. Maybe there's a and not to say authenticity is bad. I don't want to paint this picture that like authenticity is not welcome. In fact, authenticity is the healing lubricant of the relationship, right? Like it, because whether you say something from that space of deep truth or you say something from a space of deep trigger, whatever you bring up in another person is authentic. But the truth is, like, your authenticity will trigger their authenticity. And so when we can take responsibility for our stuff and do the work to come back into safety. I think if I could even put like another bucket above love, it's like safe.
Mm,
Safe versus like unsafe,
mhm,
projecting. There's a quality. So the qualities matter. And I think a big part of the inner work is learning to pay attention to the qualities of your words, your triggers, like what's actually communicating. And that's a conscious practice of awareness, right? That's why we have our trigger log inside of the Liberate programs, because the trigger log is a tool that people can use to begin in those moments before they actually have a conversation, before they actually erupt on the person, before they actually go there. They can be aware that there's a sensation, a thought, a feeling. We take them through a process of understanding and unpacking and breaking down what is actually going on. And the intention? So that when you do show up in conversation, it can come from a state of awareness as opposed to a state of unawareness. And so that's ultimately, I think, the principle here, which is it's being aware and yeah. I'll pause there and then if there's any questions, but I'll also think about your question if there's triggers and how I can maybe communicate some of those triggers. Um,
that was a great answer. I love it. Thank you. Um, maybe we talk about some leadership aspects because that feels like this is a big place that you're stepping into, like evolving your leadership. What are you feeling? Is that looking like?
well, coming back to my voice, it's really like this is a big part of my leadership. I've been really, uh, yeah, just feeling like I've gotten to a place in my life with my relationships where I don't feel like I really need anything from the people in my life from like a an unmet need space. Like I feel like I've created a lifestyle where I have so many like with my parents, a great example. Like I just love them. I don't need them to fulfill something for me because I've done so much of my work. So I'm at a place with them where like I just want to appreciate them and adore them and love them and celebrate them and create opportunities for them to experience more of themselves without taking on the responsibility of doing that. So that's leadership. So to me, it's empowering the people in my lives to step into their greatness. It's seeing people for the truth of who they are and giving them a hand up to rise into their potential. Stepping into more coaching. I coach people on my team. I don't offer coaching right now to the public. But I offer deep leadership development and coaching to my team members, and I invest in them so that they can show up fully for our clients and our customers, and they can be safe spaces for this incredible work that we're doing at Liberate, which is really truly creating like it's deep work, helping people step into the fullness of themselves and feel safe enough to do to ask themselves big questions and so there's another form of leadership. And then in relationship and intimacy, like one of the things that I'm really stepping into more of is like with women specifically, like speaking from my depths and my truth and inviting more of that into in conversations. Like I've had some really beautiful conversations. Like I started exploring intimacy and connection with someone this month, and it's been really beautiful and nourishing, and it's brought up a lot of opportunities for me to kind of like um, connect to that deeper place and speak from there and name my needs and share what's authentic and true for me, and to give her a chance to respond and to be in a weave around that. It's been really powerful. And simultaneously, it's also given me opportunities to like speak to former partners, and like with Gina, like, I we connected this last month and just dropped in, and being able to like share authentically where I'm at in this new connection and this new like this new exploration I'm in, but share that with her, and to like share it from a place of love and leadership and devotion and clarity and respect and gratitude. And it was like, that is what I mean by leadership. It's like taking on the responsibility to do the right thing, to embody the work, and to invite in more truth in my relationships, and really create a safe environment where all the people in my lives, those that have stepped into the kingdom that I have, that I'm stewarding, like in here, like it's like allowing them to really rise and feel safe to shine and grow and thrive and make a difference in the world and share their gifts in the world. And to me, that is leadership. It is not. I don't like the servant king is very much like the archetype that I've been really stepping into more. And I have a mentor, Mike Clark. He was on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he's been really inspiring that more in me, because I see that in him. Mike is incredibly successful, and I just see how much he carries, and how like it's so meaningful for me to have a mentor and a friend like him, because I can, he's 10 years older than me, so like I feel like I can really have that level of uh I just feel like I can really access more of myself. And so yeah, I mean, I'm defining my own path in leadership. This has been a conversation we've had many months, like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be in my authentic masculine expression? What does it mean to show up fully in the world? But mostly leadership is actually a big part of leadership for me is staying connected to God and divinity and source and higher power, and really serving that over anything else, and trusting that over anything else. Because I believe that leaders who are not connected to their intuition and connected to source and connected to a higher vision are not actually truly leading from a place of service. And I believe that that is one of the most important things we can do, is come back to ourselves, like do our deep work. Like the leaders, like we have to be doing our deep work, period. It's the most important thing we need to do, because when we are unconscious, we build unconscious companies. We infuse our unconscious nature into our relationships. We project. We allow power to like and control to guide subtly. And I'm guilty of this too. I don't want to say I'm perfect, by no means. I'm a man who's doing my work. And that's what my commitment is in this chapter, is to continue doing my work, and to continue owning my shit when I fall short, and to continue clearing my vessel so I can serve from the highest space of truth that I can. Because I really truly believe that this next paradigm of leadership and creation is about creating a world that our hearts know is possible. It's like stewarding in a new way of doing business, a new way of politics, a new way of finance, a new way of communicating with the world. And and that can only happen if we wake up. In fact, if we don't wake up, we're screwed. We are. We don't have that much time left on this planet if we don't all wake up. And this is why I'm so passionate about this podcast and spreading these messages, and why I'm so passionate about making affordable programs that liberate things that would cost thousands of dollars in other organizations. Like, this is why, because I just don't know of a more important thing that we could be doing as a society than inspiring the courage to wake up and the courage to practice responsibility and own our power. So that, all of that.
Taking lots of notes here. You give me lots of questions. I myself, like, I keep squirreling away here because, oh gosh, I have to ask myself that question too. That's a great one. So you did say something a little while back, which I would love to unpack further. So
Yeah.
you were talking about your mentor, the one who's 10 years older than you, and you were saying about his success and how he's able to carry so much. So can we explore this concept of what people are carrying and how that relates to success, and why that is something that you're inspired to explore further, please?
Yeah. So it's so interesting. I was just having a conversation the other day around this concept of providership. Like I feel like the masculine in many ways, the authentic, true, divine masculine is a provider, right? Like that providership is it's so primal in our nature, whether it's financially, emotionally, structurally, like being able to declutter and see the path. Like there's a lot of things that is a part of becoming a man. I believe going from, and this has been my journey, right? Like I just turned 33. Like I've been going from this sort of prince archetype to more of that king archetype. For anybody who's read King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, like, there's the archetypes of masculinity that we're stepping into. And depending on where we are in our development, depending on our traumas, depending on what we got or didn't get, where our hearts are, like it's all different for different people. It's like this idea of what we are carrying. I can speak for men. Right? I cannot speak for women, but we carry a lot. And I believe that in the relation of my conversations with Mike, it's about, I feel like I'm here to serve. Like even on my, I think on my, like my podcast website, that like I haven't updated my website in almost like 4 years. So like it's like who I was like 4 years ago. But I remember like one of the quotes I had on my podcast page was, "I seek so I can serve." And that concept has always rung true. It's always been a path for me. Like I don't do this work because I mean, yes, it's a part of my passion and it's part of my unraveling. But ultimately, like it's not just to go swim in my own shit all the time. It's actually to bring it back home so I can be more for the people in my lives. It's like that service, right? And I think that service is a big part of the masculine. It's that devotion. It's like this being of service to the world and being of service to our relationships, our the women in our lives, the children in our lives, like just being of service, right? And so I think that's a lot of what the men that are in my inner circle are carrying. Like, how do we be better fathers? How do we be better like lovers? How do we be better partners? How do we be better bosses? How do we be better leaders? How do we be better stewards? How do we be better human beings? How do we be better constituents of our planet? How do we be better community members? How can we just be, how can we serve? And that question, and inside that question, there's a lot that men might carry. And not all men are like this. I'm talking about the men that are in my inner circle, the ones that I choose to bring into my world, the people I surround myself with, because I do believe that, yeah, like my blueprint was here to be of service, to be in deep devotion to making a difference in the world and the people in my lives. And I don't just, for me, it's just that's a big part of my path. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if there was a deeper question
Yeah,
there, but I'm happy to go
no,
in.
I'm enjoying your answer. I'm curious to know, like, if you think about yourself and your path going forward, do you have a like a vision of you carrying more, and what does that look like?
Well, this is the piece. It's like whatever the moment requires of me.
Right.
It's like I'm not gonna go in from my mind say, yes, I'm gonna do more of this. I'm not gonna create more work for myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm gonna continue living my life. And I have plenty in front of me that requires me to do bigger, to be more, to show up bigger, to get out of my own way, to dissolve my ego, to like there's a lot that's in front of me already that's forcing me to surrender. It's forcing me. And that alone is like a commitment, right? So like
Sure.
I guess the carrying piece is what I feel what I mean by that is we're all carrying a responsibility to be whatever the moment needs us to be. That's what I'm meaning. And in that one statement right there, I think there's many things. So like if the moment requires us to have more finances, that's what we must do. We must figure out how to become providers of that resource. If the moment is requiring us to literally hold the container of loving safety for our children to experience whatever they're experiencing, that's what the moment requires. So it's there's no it's like a maybe there's a quality of patience that we need to be carrying. There's a quality of providership, quality of trust, a quality of regulation, and a quality of truth and discernment and leadership. So these are all tools, if I might add, that I think we carry in our toolbox. And then whatever the moment requires, money can be a tool that we carry in our toolbox. Our skills and our abilities to create value and resource at will, our ability to uh, communicate effectively. Like these are all skills, relational leadership skills, financial leadership skills. I mean, we can go in so many like health. Health is a something we must carry. Our bodies physically, like if we need to be in a situation where we must protect, and we need to be physically in shape, or we need to avoid a situation, and we need to be perceptive. Like these are all things, tools, aspects, qualities that I think we carry, or we get to carry. I don't know if I this is how I see it, at least. This is how I'm choosing to view growth and development, and leadership. Coming back to leadership, at the end of the day, like this is leadership. Leadership is not anything other than just being whatever the moment requires you to be, sticking to your word, and owning when you fall short. Like ultimately, like those are foundational principles of leadership. And there's so many more. Like I'm there's so many leadership books out there, like and from people that are likely way more accomplished, successful, further along in their careers, and from a career, I like to think of leadership as multidimensional. There's self leadership, and there's relational leadership, then there's like organizational leadership. And they're all different layers of leadership. They all require different skill sets and qualities and tools and awarenesses for us to be effective leaders at these different levels. Um, so hopefully that answers the question.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for diving into that further. Um, how do you think we become? This is like just a out there question. I don't know why this is in my head, but this is a question I want to ask you. How do you think we become better humans?
I think it comes with the first choice, like the choice to just consider the people in our lives. Like I really feel like the desire to be a better human being comes when we connect back to our hearts and we connect to our shared humanity with other people. Like I I feel like it's so easy to project blame, point fingers, but when you see somebody else and you can connect to their trauma, their truth, where they are in their lives, like I don't want to be mean to people. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want that. I want to be in harmony. And so I think it's first coming back to our hearts and connecting to our shared pain, connecting to the pain of others, really seeing ourselves and the other people in our lives. Like I think ultimately that is how do we become better human beings? Like by learning to see ourselves, the truth of ourselves, the truth of our patterns, the truth of our triggers, the truth of and which comes how it's like practicing awareness, practicing mindfulness, practicing the work, doing deeper self inquiry, shadow work. There's so many modalities and tools that allow for more intimacy with self. But I really feel like it comes back to that piece of, it's when we see ourselves, it's impossible not to see the beauty in another human being. It's impossible to not see beauty. Like we can choose to see beauty or we can choose to project judgment, right? Like both are both like and so I think it comes back to the choice to just the choice that the fact that you even asked that question shows me that you have a desire. How can I be better? How can I love my kids better? How can I love my husband better? How can I love my parents better if I have the opportunity to? How can I be a little kinder to my Uber driver today? I think it's these coming back to the micro choices. I really believe in the micro choices. And I don't believe that being a better human being is something that's far out in the future. It's a decision we get to make in every single moment with every single human being we're with. And when we practice awareness of how our choices, how our presence, how our environment, how everything is contributing to like, and we take extreme ownership and responsibility and we practice radical honesty. I yeah. So that's maybe also just extreme ownership and radical responsibility. That's how we begin the journey of becoming better human beings. And using our relationships as mirrors. Like they're just mirrors. You can't get mad at a mirror for showing you exactly what you are. That pisses people off when I say it. I say it all the time to some of our clients. I say it to my team members. I say it to, I was like, I'm just a mirror. I know you're mad at me. I know you don't want to hear what I have to say right now. And you can't have something get triggered within you. I can't trigger something in you that doesn't already exist. And so when you realize that, and you take responsibility. Oh yeah, okay. This person said something to me. He's not a bad person. He's not a mean person. He's got his own hurt, or he sees my greatness, whatever, whichever pattern you want to go into. But this thing that I'm experiencing is within me. How do I take ownership of this? That path then allows you to become a better human being. The line of inquiry around that allows you to be less of a wrecking ball in your relationships to more of a soothing balm that doesn't always stay all centered in Zen. You're authentic, but you're not projecting or hurting. You're taking ownership, and there's something really beautiful about a human being that takes ownership for their faults and their struggles and their challenges. Like it just how many times have you experienced that, Georgina, when somebody's just like says an authentic "I'm sorry," like it just diffuses so
Yeah.
much. Like you almost forget what you were even mad about. And that to me is like those are the things we get to do to become better human beings, I think. So
Yeah, I think you're right. That taking responsibility is important, and I quite often have conversations with my kids, maybe if things haven't gone quite so well, and it's always a good reminder that like nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, but it's as you say, it's what happens in that repair process that matters. Like, can you
yeah,
recognize when things have been damaged, and then can you fix them in a way that brings everything back together?
yeah, yeah. I mean, repair, right? Authenticity, repair. It's just the practice of relating.
Hmm.
Really
Hmm.
appreciate just opportunities to continue practicing. We're all walking each other home. The words of
Yeah,
the late Ram Dass.
Yeah, it's crazy to me as well, like having these conversations and thinking actually some of the things we're talking about, like good communication, for example, is almost like a basic. It's like a almost a thing that we should all be able to master is good, honest, authentic, vulnerable communication. But I think, myself included, I think lots of people do find conversation difficult, and then we make mistakes in those conversations, and then that impacts our relationships and how we see ourselves, etc. And I think you're so right, this notion of developing our awareness so we can identify those parts of ourselves that we want to work on or want to develop, so that we can be better humans, because that impacts everybody, good for all of us.
I really feel like the biggest impact we can be in the world is not, we talked about this, like your purpose is not what you do, it's who you are. It's expressed through who you are. And, it's funny, I went back to my website recently and I was just like, oh my God, like look at this kid. And, but beautifully, he's also a very wise young man. I'll give him credit. Um, on the headline of my website, it says, be the ripple. And when I thought about that, I was like, wow, what a simple way to sum up what I believe, why I believe in the work so much.
And you already
Because
knew back
yeah,
then.
I knew in some ways, but I couldn't understand it. I knew it, but I couldn't understand it, which is a whole nother conversation of like, trusting your intuition and your knowing, and your mind catches up eventually. But I can see now the brilliance of when we wake up to the fullness of ourselves, when we realize all that we are, all of our parts, when we have the awareness of everything, and then we choose to engage from a space of conscious leadership and ownership, we are a ripple. We are a positive ripple. And if we're not, we're a negative ripple.
Mhm.
So either way, you're being a ripple, because you just don't know how your conversation, just you even being kind to the cashier, looking at them in their eyes and saying thank you, just for one extra second, and appreciating them. You have no idea what that's then going to turn into for them in the way they move forward in their day. You cannot calculate the micro choices of impact that you can make. You just cannot. The mind wants to like try and find the big thing we're making an impact with. Oh, I'm building this thing. Oh, I'm doing this thing. Oh, I've done this thing. It's all just a bunch of like ego that wants to size up, measure up, compare over there. But I'm like, I mean, when we just come back to just that piece, like you just don't know the impact you're making by just being a little bit kinder. And in order to get there, you have to get out of your own way. And what's getting in your own way? All of your parts, all of your insecurities, all your fears, all your judgments. And that's why I'm an advocate for the inner work. This is why Liberate exists. This is why this podcast exists. This is why. Because I believe that waking people up, or helping people wake themselves up. I take that back. Helping people wake themselves up. That's all we do. We don't wake you up. We don't do the work for you. All we're doing is creating a space for you to realize who you are and be surrounded by support systems to cheer you on as you step into more of who you are. And then you can go out into the world and be the biggest ripple and allow people to feel seen by you because you see yourself.
I love it. I mean, and that switch from thinking about who you're going to be rather than what you're going to do is so fundamental, isn't it? Like you say, you could build a massive business with not the right intention, and then who do you be through that business is maybe not, it may be harmful. Whereas you could build that same business but with a different personality behind it, a different place of being, and it has a completely different impact on the world. And I think in our culture, we can get so obsessed by measuring what we've done. Oh, I've done this, I've got that, I've got this trophy, I've got this success thing, this metric. And it's quite hard, isn't it, to measure some of the more intangible beingness. Like, how do you measure someone's kindness, or how do you measure someone's love? We shouldn't even be trying to measure these things, but almost those softer things are not as valued as much as they should be. But you're right. Imagine if there were just different values that dominated
Mm.
we would live in such a different place. Like we're quite strange as a culture what we value, like valuing wealth and status, all these things, not necessarily love or kindness or passion. We put some of the human factors, center more of those emotions and those things. I think we create something very different, and we need it. We need it different. We need something different desperately.
Yeah, and I just want to wrap this conversation with an inspiring reminder. All it takes is the awareness.
Mm.
It's just the awareness, and you can be this today,
Yeah.
right? And in fact, like, I was thinking about this, like, I'm just this concept of being a ripple, and if you met somebody who is in a position of power, and they were able to experience you being this for them, how would that trickle down?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know who is in a position of power? You don't, because you might be kind to the one person who has a son whose son is some Instagram, TikTok influencer with 1 million something followers. And that trail of impact now just goes and sparks up the world. You just don't know. You just don't. So be kind. Choose to be kind. That's I kind over right. Always, if you can. And if you're not in that space, that's okay too. Because a part of developing kindness is first being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Can't be kind to someone else if you're not kind to yourself. So over everything, just give yourself a big squishy hug, fam. Gina, I love you. I really do. I appreciate you so much, and we've grown so much together. We were just reflecting on, when did we meet? 24, 25 maybe when I was, and I'm 33 now. Like,
It's crazy. Like when you said you turned 33, I'm like, what? How has the time gone? It's nuts.
yeah, yeah. It's beautiful to just slow down and reflect and so recognize that life is so precious. So every year that I get to be alive is just such a gift, such a gift. So I thank God and so much for just the privilege of getting to breathe one more day. And it's a beautiful thing that I get to breathe with you today. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your old friend, Georgina. And from us, stay grounded. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajjana.com/liberate, that is LIBER8, to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.